So up until recently, I've been using the Digitakt mostly as a straight up one-shot drum machine. And in terms of that approach, I find that the Digitakt is for sure one of the most intuitive options on the market. But of course, you could go much further with how you approach or process your samples with the Digitakt. Like you might want to use longer samples instead of just straight up one-shots. In this instance, while the Digitakt doesn't really have a synth, it definitely steps into groovebox territory, just through its workflow and especially its sequencer. And so after exploring the Digitakt's sample chop function, there's a few sweet spots that I landed on. This is the sample that I started with, or one of the samples I started with. And here's where I ended up with the groove afterwards. So this is just kick and the sample that I chopped up. Maybe with some hi-hat. See, these are some more longer samples that I also chopped up. And so that's exactly what this video is about, getting from A to B. Starting all the way back at A, where did I get these longer loops or samples to begin with? I got them from Tracklib, today's sponsor. They just changed up their entire model to really benefit the producer in an infinite way. Mainly because now you don't have to pay extra money to license a sample if you do choose to use it. So now there's new membership options to choose from, all with different amounts of credits per month. The comparison I'm drawing here is to splice.com. I'm sure that a bunch of you already know what Splice is. Tracklib is just an entirely different approach because you literally are doing digital crate digging online. So I find that both of these platforms do have their own separate lanes. They're two different things for sure. That being said, a general advantage of using Tracklib is that they have stems now. There's like a stem feature where with certain tracks, you could break the stems down into individual instruments and use those. Also, there's a lot of, as you'd expect, like old school soul kind of stuff in their repertoire, but they also have like this weird synthy, like electro section, which is also kind of retro sounding. And these are the types of samples that you're just not gonna find anywhere else. Another relevant comparison I'd like to make is to Traktor Pro, which is a DJ performance software connected directly to Beatport. So you're able to essentially choose the loops and cues that you want from any track on Beatport. Tracklib is like the producer's version of that. You could set loop points, you could change the length of those loop points, you could change the pitch of that track as well, all within Tracklib. And when you go back to those tracks that you've tampered with within your playlists, again, everything has been saved. It's all ready to go. It makes the platform that much more intuitive and useful. Of course, everything is legal to use now. So I think that's going to be a really big game changer. And I think that it's also going to change the sound of the industry in a way, because now everyone's just going to be using Tracklib stuff. I came prepared. I made a playlist specifically for this video. It's the Digitakt playlist. And here's a few loops and ideas that I've used that I ended up dropping into the Digitakt for this video exploration. So that's where I found the samples that we'll be using today. Going back to the Digitakt, let's get into how to flip these samples in a very fun and unique way. So again, I came prepared. I have this pattern that I've already sort of experimented with. And so what I've done here is I've just copy pasted this pattern over to here. So we have all the same parts that we'll be experimenting with, and we'll see where it takes us. The very first thing we'll be looking at is this sample that I've uploaded into track 8 right here. So this is a 4-bar loop that I've downloaded directly from Tracklib. I'll just disperse this randomly over the sequence and see what this gives us. Kind of sounds like shit for now. Maybe with a kick, it sort of sounds cool. I'm on this track, I'm just gonna hit SRC, and this shows us the sample. This is like the waveform of the sample. You can play through the entire sample if you want, get a visual of it. Hit function and source, and you have 4 options to choose from here. So one shot, which is just the entire sample, There's warp, repitch, as well as slice, and that's the option we're going to be choosing here, slice. From here you can see that the parameters on this page have actually changed now. So there's a grid option here. There's a sample length as well. I'm going to go back to the sample. You could see the amount of chops here. I could add more chops with this knob, G, 16 chops, 8 chops. I could do the same thing from this page, right? 8, 4, 16. So like the manual or standard way of using this function would be to go to your step, and then you could like choose the chop that you want to add to that step. So this is like I said, it's very manual. It's very it's like grunt work, and this might actually be the best approach for you if you're really hearing something, or if you already have other elements of your track that you laid down and you have to play something specific within this sample. In this case though, this is pretty much the very first thing that we're doing, so we could get much more creative with it. So we're on the sample page, gonna hit yes. We have two options here. So create linear locks. What does that do? Already very cool. If we add some hats to this, cool, I'll go back to the sample page again. There's a second option which we haven't looked at. Create random locks. Ooh. That's very cool, and we could tamper with this if we want. You know, just maybe add notes. Oh, that's really cool. Ooh. I really like this one, so I wouldn't change it, but if you want to, you could just do the same thing again. Create random locks again. I like the other one better, but anyways, you get the point, right? This was kind of cool too. If I go back to my sample page, I have a bunch of other samples from Tracklib that I've just dropped in here. So these are all longer samples that I've hand selected. I know that they're all around 135 BPM, so I know that they're gonna fit. What happens if I change the grid? Right, so it's just throwing out ideas at us, and I think that this is a great starting point. It's like a great idea sketcher to use this method. Clearly this is working on a melodic part. I have, stop this for now. This is a rhythmic part which has a note in the bottom there, so we're actually gonna put a high pass on this so we just hear the very high end of that. Something like that. And let's see what we could do with this. Let's just, again, we're just gonna throw a bunch of notes in here randomly and see what happens, see if we like it. Oh, it's muted, 1 second. So that alone is kind of already cool. We've panned it as well. If we want to go back to this option though, again, bring this down to slice again. Okay, and then yes, create random locks. Let's see what this does. We can also change the play direction, so just to give a visual of this. So now it's reverse. That gives us a different result. We'll change this to forward. This is another like synthy kind of perk riff that I found on Tracklib. Let's just throw that in there. Maybe a second pair of hats in here. The Digitakt does downgrade your samples to mono, but once you start adding effects onto these tracks, let's mute this. So we're just getting the hi-hat here. Let's throw some delay on there, and now we have a nice stereo delay. And so the sample is essentially no longer mono. So far, great exploration, but we could level this up again though if we want to. This is sort of like our main sample idea, I would say. So let's talk about probability specifically on this track. I'm actually going to mute mostly everything, maybe just hats and kick. And I'm choosing to keep this technique on one melodic track because I find that if you use probability too often on too many tracks, it just becomes way too busy. So we have this riff that we've heard. One way of changing up the variation of that riff is just to straight up add more pages. So now we're getting something different. Let's go back to one page though. what I always like to do is go over to the trig page, and we have this probability option here. Let's open this up. And I'm gonna change the probability, I'm gonna stop this for a second, on a few of these steps. There's two directions that you can go in. So I'll go to the first step here. I could change the percentage of the probability, which means that it's not gonna be quite as accurate as going to the right instead of the left. 1, 2. So this is where we want to be. So this means that this particular step will play the first time out of 2 bars or 2 sequences. I guess we'll call it bars, pages, 2. I think you know what I mean. Whereas if on the same step, if I want to go 2, 2, it means that it'll play the second out of 2 times. The first time it'll skip this step. And we could go even further if we want. 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3. I think it goes up to 8, but for now we're just going to stick to 1 and 2. So that's the option we've chosen. This particular step will play the first out of 2 times. Let's see what that gives us. Right, it's a very slight variation, so let's mess this up a little bit more. Still not getting much of a change, so we're just going to keep doing this until we hear enough of a variation that we want. Right, so I'm just changing these. Oh, there we go, hearing something different there. Okay, so we're getting different rhythms. Let's go back to this page. Yes. Maybe hit random locks again with the other parts. If you wanted even more variation over top of this, of course, you could add more pages to this again and then, tweak as you go along. But I think for now, this is fine. I like everything to be contained within 1 bar. That's just my approach. And so that's where the probability comes into play. The thing I love about using longer loops or samples in combination with the sample chop is that I would never come up with an idea or a track like this, let's say like in my DAW. There's just no way. This has taken me into a completely new, experimental, creative direction. And the most important thing is really that I'm just having fun with it. Just another reason to love the Digitakt. So I have my Oxy One and motor synth off to the side here. What's up with that? As many of you know, I absolutely love the Oxy One. I find that this is just the best sequencer. I personally think that it's a more diverse and stronger sequencer than the sequencers on the Electron units. It just has more options to choose from, but there's still little nooks and crannies like what we just discovered today where the Electron sequencers are still superior in that way, basically because the workflow is built right into the unit, right? So that's just an advantage. So there's a lot going on here. We're gonna mute some stuff. I think that there's still some more exploration to be done here with the motor synth. So we're gonna add a melodic part from the motor synth over top of what's going on here and see what we could do with that. Join me on Patreon to get a little bit further into this exploration. If you are interested in purchasing the Digitakt, please do use the affiliate link that's linked in the description of this video. Using that link does not cost you anything extra. It just helps me out. It's a great way to support this channel, along with maybe joining the Patreon, liking, subscribing if you want to see more of this content. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you on Patreon for the extended version of this video, as well as a bunch of other exclusive content. And of course, with no ads. All right, see you soon.